The saddest thing for me is knowing something that nobody knows. And, if we really wanted this world to work, we'd first recognize that psychology is probably the very worst field of study for the human being. They're teaching humans that there's certain people, they call them autistic, neurodivergent, attention deficit. They're not realizing that those people are actually on the right side of mental illness. That when you sit here and you look at the Gretas that are young people that are crying, or you wonder why there's children that you could sit them on a piano and they just know how to play it, or that there's kids where you can throw change on the ground and they automatically know how much there's there. Well, I can tell you why. It's because they may know something that I know and that you don't know yet. That if you're looking at change in your hand, they already know that seeing the change, it's already in their mind. That you're counting the change in your hand, failing to realize that if you even see the pennies and quarters, you see them because that's already an image formed within the visual cortex of your brain. That your brain has already accounted for it for you to be able to visualize it. And you're functioning within ego. Like you're literally in an illusion because these people realize that the world that they see outside around them is them. That means that they're people that didn't have the illusion of me and ego like everyone else. And so they don't understand me, 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 me. They don't understand selfishness, entitlement, hatred, anger. They don't understand inhumanity. They see wars and they see people blowing up. Their mind can visualize families and children trying to go to school just like them. They look at somebody with a different skin color and you can't convince them that that isn't a human being. They don't see what you do. They see trees and they understand oxygen and they know that we will destroy ourselves if we don't get ecological balance. And they know that. And they don't understand why nobody else does. You see, they don't know that just like the other people that don't understand them, they don't understand you because they see things purely objectively. Their imagination is actively part of the genesis of the reality they live within, and they have profound predictive powers, and they can see ground up. Ground up thinking within the DSM-5 is part of a mental illness, as is a heightened sense of justice. The heightened sense of justice is called empathy. You see, the afflicted majority of people all have a malformation of the sympathetic nervous system, and the ego is actually a mental illness. The voice in one's head is very close to schizophrenia, that if you think with an audible voice, then you're disabled because that is not the way that the brain evolved. And so for those of us that thought visually, we could put a remote control car together and then we go to class and we don't understand what's going on because it's all words when we see everything. That I could have told you anything about reptiles, amphibians, whales. I already understood internal combustion engines as a very young child. By probably, I don't know, 10 or 12, I had memorized like the bore stroke and compression ratio of my engines in my dad's car. Yeah, he had a 460. It's a 4.36 bore by 3.85 stroke, 385 series engine, 72 cc combustion chambers. The 429 had a 3.59 inch stroke. Yeah, but then in 1972, it went down to 8.5 to 1 compression because they went to a 95 cc chamber. And then they reduced the horsepower from 365 to I think 260. So that's why I got a Lincoln like my dad's in high school. And then I used the engine so I could put it in a Fox body. And so I just knew things, and so I could build a remote control car in third grade. But as far as the school system was concerned, I had a learning disability and they stigmatized me. And in my mind, I wanted to be like everyone else. I thought I wasn't as intelligent as people. And I've been isolated. I've been shamed, smeared, misunderstood. And I failed because when you put me into an environment, I perfect it. I see everything. I see how to fix everything. And I see the big picture and nobody else does. You see, everybody functions on ego. And so they start to turn against you and they start to think that you're talking out of place. They start to look for who's the owner, I don't do that. I don't have a hierarchy. I don't live in a world where one person is more important than another person. Like, I just acknowledge the experience of people. I can see when you talk to me, I no longer see people, I see the world that people live within. And when I got my heart broken again, all I did was start looking at my own mind again. And then I rectified my subconscious with my conscious. And then I discovered the neurological basis of enlightenment in entirety. And I imagined I could see that there must be afferent neurons that penetrate the entire cerebral cortex of all people to make the animal fight or flight reaction work. And so in my imagination, I pictured animal psychology and I started studying animals by watching them. I would put myself in the first person perspective of animals. And so looking at my dog Turbo, I realized by human standards he'd be considered enlightenment for present moment consciousness. And when I watched him bark and develop an attachment to another dog, then I understand the mechanism of the sympathetic nervous system and the emotional experience of it that wakes him up in the middle of the evening is actually what's being recreated and transmutated into something's wrong with me for humans. And so understanding and redefining the emotional experiences as contextual phenomenon that help animals navigate the three-dimensional reality formed within the brain, I started to redefine what emotions meant. And then I started to look at the whole continuum of human evolution, even imagining the formation of imagination and how that would affect consciousness. And then started to redefine the meaning of words themselves, words as symbolic or sounds correlated to phenomenon. And then I understood the problem with our education system, understanding that words themselves have been confused with knowledge, when knowledge in the form of words alone has no experiential component. And so people are being indoctrinated thinking that they know something and becoming emotionally attached to the knowledge, failing to realize that knowledge only comes from people like me, people that can take things from the expansive universe of my imagination, an experiential secondary reality that is a overlay to the moment I live within, and that the disappearance of the illusion of me is what brought me into being in a pure momentary experience of consciousness. And objectivity and ground up thinking is normal. And so there's people that sit down and start playing music and you don't understand why, because you think at the cadence of a voice within a brain that can command a fighter jet or Formula One car and make decisions at that level. You can see how much brain power is available and it's obvious. And that there's people, the Newtons, the Benjamin Franklins, that could sit down and just create a whole field of study. Yet the rest of everyone else taking and plagiarizing and paraphrasing and parroting the thoughts, ideas, and notions of the very few of us who actually have the ability to bring into existence knowledge. But the knowledge that I have is saying that everybody has access to that infinite domain of expanding consciousness that I was able to relive my entire life. My entire life, I've relived it because what I discovered was that the sympathetic nervous system causes cognitive inhibitions, that the intellectual and creative capacities of all people is well beyond their comprehension because people are stuck in a consciousness that is essentially an illusion because of malformed emotions, positive feedback loops within the sympathetic nervous system that are continually recreating the experience of being inadequate, not enough, and not enough, not good enough is the animal fight or flight reaction. Just a pervasive fear and an abandonment anxiety that is a separation anxiety that you could observe in young animals was a neurological pattern that has been trapped within the sympathetic system as well. And so there's afferent and efferent neurons that capture the experience of an animal to form a fight or flight reaction. Except for humans, it's malformed because the output of the reaction was interpreted also as the cause and keeping us stuck in a permanent fight or flight we call ego.